In the IDS software, we built in some pretty impressive enhancement tools. If you watch the intro video to the software, what you saw was me talking about initially we built the software to be able to do an analysis of our latent print images. And we were finding it clunky to toggle back and forth between our IDS software that allowed us to do our analysis and other software programs that would let us do our enhancements to our images so we could do a better analysis. And so we started building in enhancement capabilities in the software. And there's some really pretty powerful enhancement tools in the software. And we've even coded some of the most complicated, most difficult processes into what we call easy buttons. And I'll show you some of those here in just a little bit. So let me show you some of these features. This is a little bit of a longer tutorial. Stick with it. Bear with me on this one. Watch the whole thing. We've got some great things to show you in here. So let's take a look at some examples that I've pulled up on my computer screen. All right, so down here on my film strip, I have a few different examples, and let me show you where to access some of these features to begin with. I'm going to go ahead and click on this image, and these enhancement capabilities are going to be in your tool palette at the very top under image processing. Across the top, we've already got some features that we covered in a navigating the software tutorial. So here's your printing. Here's the icon to fit your image to the entire window. So if you zoomed in a bunch, you can click this button and it'll zoom you back out. Your zoom in, your zoom out, of course, your mouse wheel and your select zoom up over here in the center work as well. This is a rotate right 90 degrees. This is, or excuse me, clockwise. This is a rotate counterclockwise 90 degrees. The ever important Matt Marvin undo button. Here we have the ability to actually change the filter or the interpolation that is going on with an image during a rotation, and I'm going to show you some examples of that. We also have the ability to turn anti-aliasing on and off. Anti-aliasing kind of takes the jagged edges of pixels when they're on their angle and tries to smooth some of that out. Also, sometimes you'll notice that in patterned areas there seem to be some lines that appear that aren't really there. Anti-aliasing can kind of help take away some of those false appearances. A lot of our enhancements are, of course, going to be under this button called Enhancements. We have some pretty standard things, being able to convert an image to grayscale, inverting the colors. We have an entire tutorial on color subtraction. These are our easy buttons. They're sorted by what type of ridges you have. Do you have purple ridges, white ridges, orange ridges? And we'll get into that a little bit more here later. And then some of these processes, right now only two, but we're working on expanding these capabilities. Converting to grayscale and inverting the colors can work with any selected area. And you can do a square, a lasso, a circle, a magic wand, or a polygon. And I'll show you each of those as well. So let's start with auto orientation. What auto orientation is going to do is it's going to look at the image and it's going to look for any of these parallel lines like you get in a ruler, and it's going to try to take them to the nearest 90-degree angle. I will be upfront and honest here and tell you that this does not work every time, and the further off it is from a 90-degree angle, the poorer the performance. If, however, you get in the habit of trying to photograph your latent prints, that they are in the proper orientation and that the scale is aligned with the proper orientation of your print, this can be a big time saver, and that's why it's in the software. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on auto orientation, and you're going to see it adjust it so that these lines then go to the nearest 90-degree angle. So that's what auto orientation does for you. We can also convert an image to grayscale. That's pretty straightforward. I can just click on this. We're going to see this RGB image go to grayscale. I'm going to click on undo, get it back to where I was. I can, of course, invert the colors. And if you have grayscale, it'll just invert the colors on grayscale as well, so it works with that as well. So I can go ahead and undo that. So that's auto orientation, converting to grayscale, inverting the colors, pretty typical things. Let me show you, because converting to grayscale and inverting the colors work with selected area, let me show you a few of these. Probably the one that requires the most explaining is Magic Wand. Magic Wand is going to be looking for similar colored pixels. So when you click in an area, it's going to look for similar colored pixels in that area. So I just clicked there, it selected everything. And so I could convert that one section to grayscale if I wanted. And because it's white and black, it really didn't do a whole lot. So I'll go ahead and undo that. Or I could invert the colors and you'll see that turn into black. So that's the Magic Wand. If you wanted to get out of any specific area selection, you can just click anywhere in the image again and it will excuse me, I still have it selected. You can just click anywhere in the image and it'll undo it. There I just clicked on the select image tool because every time I kept clicking I just kept making more selections, but you can just click off the image and it'll take that off as well. The polygon tool allows you to make multiple clicks, and then as soon as you are done you can double click, and double clicking will end that. So here's my double click. So that makes my selection, and same thing in those selected areas I can do things like inverting the colors. All right. So now let's go take a look at circles. Circles pretty straightforward. You can draw a circle and it makes a selection. Square is going to be the same way. Draw a square and make a selection. And then lasso. Lasso is going to be a good way to draw a line around something. Lasso is going to try to snap to the color changes. So as I draw my lasso tool around here, you're going to see that it's an easier way for me to kind of draw a straighter line on something, as long as my mouse control is better than it has been right here. It's going to make it easier for me to draw a straighter line along the edge of a ruler, for example. And I could then, of course, drag that down wherever I wanted it to be if I wanted to encompass an entire area. So those are how you select areas. Again, right now, the only things that work in there are invert colors and convert to grayscale. We are working on expanding those capabilities. All right, so let's talk about this rotation filter just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and open this image. So let me explain to you what this image is. It looks normal size on here, but this is actually an itty bitty image. This is multiple squares of individual pixels. This is a single pixel line for red, a single pixel line for blue, and a single pixel line for green. Okay. So one of the things with rotation with most software programs is that interpolation or some type of filter gets applied during rotation. And what it's going to do is a pixel is square, so square pixel as best my hands can do it. And if you put that on an end and you stack a bunch of them next to each other, it creates a very jagged line that's not very appealing to the eye. This is one of the big benefits of using IDS software, software that's designed by examiners, for examiners, and the great thing about that is that we say we really don't care that much about the jagged lines. We want the original information to be there. Now, there are instances where you would care about the jagged lines. Certainly, the lower resolution the image, the more those jagged lines may interfere with your comparison. So if you're dealing with really low image resolution, on some known prints, maybe out of a Department of Motor Vehicles print or something like that, you may need to leave some of these filters on because those jagged edges may actually mess up your comparison. But let me show you what most software programs do. We left you those options in case you do have a low resolution image that you need them, but we also encoded a way for us to not apply any rotation filter or any interpolation. So a lot of times you may have heard people say you need to apply all of your color processes first, and then at the very end you do your rotation because that's going to minimize the amount of blending of the colors, but not with our software. So let me show you what we can do. So if we look over here on my computer screen, we have a few different filters: bicubic, bilinear, none, and fast. I don't want to just drag this tutorial on. I'm just going to show you one of the worst ways that this can happen, and that's with bilinear. And so I'm going to select my rotation tool, and I'm going to start to rotate. Because this is such a small image and because I'm zoomed in so much, I really have to turn this, this rotation hand quite a bit. You will never in Latent Prints be working with an image that's this small, so we figure it's not an issue just for a demonstration purpose. What you're going to see is as soon as I lock this rotation in, we're going to see a lot of blending of these pixels. That's what you get with these rotation filters. This is what you get with other software programs that do rotation, because what an artist needs is for there to typically not be these jagged lines in their images. But for latent print examiners, certainly when we're dealing with these high resolution images, it doesn't cause a problem for us. So I closed out of that image, I reopened it, and this time I'm going to choose my rotation filter as none. I'm going to do that exact same thing. I'm going to rotate this around a bunch of times. Keep rotating. And when I feel like I've kind of jagged up those pixels enough, Okay, so I've got all these pixels that are squares and have some are stacked on top of each other and next to each other. But now when I lock in that rotation, absolutely no recombination of those pixels occurred. This is great. This is big. This has been one of the concerns for latent print examiners for a long time. When do you apply this rotation? With our software, you can turn interpolation and rotation filters off. So we hope you find that super useful. Let's get into a little bit more about what we can do with different enhancements. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this orange print right here. And this is a really good print. I mean, this is a gorgeous latent print. It doesn't really require enhancements, but it's clear enough that I'm hoping that by running you through some of the enhancements, you'll be able to see how the enhancements work, even though I think we're all aware that we could just very well compare this print as it sits right here. I clicked on image processing, and I'm going to go ahead and click on enhancements. And when I click on enhancements, it's going to bring up a few options for me. First of all, I can increase my contrast and I can decrease my contrast. One thing I want you to know that we found really annoying in other software programs is these sliders. If I run the slider all the way down, oh my goodness, I really messed that up. And now I need to get my slider right back to where it was. Where was it? I'm not quite sure. Well, we have a really easy solution for that. It doesn't matter where you put that contrast slider, you just click on the name contrast and it's going to reset it right back to 0. Oh, I did too much contrast? No problem. Click on the contrast name and it will reset that slider. Brightness. Let's talk about brightness for a little bit. A lot of software programs will take the brightness setting and they will actually clip certain amounts of information in order to increase the brightness on an image. We didn't want to do that. We didn't want to be pulling information out, especially if you've got a latent print and you filled the frame. Your latent print is making up almost everything that you're interested in that image, so we really want to avoid any kind of a clipping process. And so what we did is we built down here channel offsets. So we can increase the reds, we can increase the greens, we can increase the blues, or we can decrease them. And so what you're going to see is the way we decided to increase brightness was actually by increasing the reds, greens, and blues. Of course, a maximum amount of reds, greens, and blues equals white. So as we increase those, we're going to be brightening up our image. I say this because if you have a really large image, a really high resolution, maybe even a footwear or full palm impression, you may see some color flashing, and that's just the red, green, and blue sliders setting themselves. I'll try to, maybe if I do this fast enough, maybe you can see that flash of color. That's because we are setting those red, green, and blue sliders. So this has really been designed for you to work top to bottom. Work on your contrast and your brightness. If you have a grayscale image, you can work on your blacks and your whites. But because the brightness is linked to these channel offsets, I would touch these channel offsets last, because otherwise you can end up turning your image a color you didn't really want it to be, especially when then you go back up to adjust your brightness. Same thing with the brightness slider. Once you get it off somewhere that you really didn't want it to be, you can just click on brightness and it'll reset that back to where it was. Blacks and whites, they work best in black and white images, but they will also work here. And then we've got the reds. We can increase the reds, we can increase the greens, we can increase the blues. And if you want to reset those, same thing, you just click on each of their names. You also have the ability to make any individual channel invisible, or you can make it so you're only seeing one channel. So a lot of options there on how to handle these. So let's run through some of the options that we've talked about with this image, and let me show you what we can do with it. Again, I know that this image doesn't really require any enhancements to be able to compare, but let's just go ahead and run through some processes. So first things first with this rotation is off. I don't have to wait and do all my processes at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rotate this the way I want it to be rotated. I like that, and I'm going to lock in my rotation. I'm going to click my fit to window up here, and now let's see, the first thing I think I'm going to want to do here is I've got light ridges and dark furrows, so I'm going to go ahead and invert those colors. Okay, so now I'm going to go in and I'm going to do some enhancements. I think I'd like to increase the contrast a little bit, but that made it pretty bright, so I'm going to go ahead and decrease my brightness as well. Okay, I like that. That looks pretty good. And I'm pretty content with my red, green, and blue channel offset. So I'm just going to go ahead and close this panel. I'm going to hit save. And I'm just going to go ahead and save that. And that'll save all those enhancements so that when I convert this to grayscale, which I think is going to be my next step, when I convert this to grayscale, it's not going to overwrite anything that I did in my enhancements. So I just save those changes. And I'm going to go ahead and convert this to grayscale. Great. And I could actually use a little bit more contrast now that I've done that. So I'm going to go back into my enhancements. I'm going to boost my contrast up a little bit more. I'm going to decrease that brightness just a little bit. And now that I'm in grayscale, I'm going to have really good luck, I know, with my blacks. Let's increase those blacks. And let's make those furrows a little bit brighter. So let's push those whites over a little bit. And while that was a very good image to begin with, now we have a great image. So that's just kind of one way of running through some of the enhancements of a print here. Let me show you another way that you can work with channel offsets. I'm going to load up this example I've put down here. Now this is not a casework print. This is just me putting some prints on a piece of paper. And we're going to go click on enhancements here. And one thing that can happen sometimes, especially if you get maybe a yellow background, if we think about our color theory a little bit, we think, well, the background is yellow, the opposite of yellow is very close to blue. So I'm going to go ahead and increase my blues, and we can actually take that yellow out. So if your eyes were having a hard time with the yellow, we can make this look much more like a white piece of paper. So that's another way to be working with your channel offsets. Let me load up for you another example here. I'm going to go ahead and load up this purple image. Okay, so let me show you something else that we can do under image processing. I'm going to go image processing. I'm going to go enhancements. Now over here you can access all your red, green, and blue channels, and you can simultaneously access your cyan, magenta, yellow, and black channels. Cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, if you weren't familiar, is an abbreviated CMYK, I guess for the black in black. And so if I click on RGB channels, we're going to extract out all those channels, and you can see them here on the right: red, green, and blue, top to bottom. And cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, you can see these as well: cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. Now you may be thinking to yourself, hey, I didn't convert this color mode. How am I able to see the CMYK? It must be some filter that's applied. And I'm not going to give away all of our secrets on our software, but I'm going to tell you that you are dealing with full CMYK values, even though you're looking at an RGB image on an RGB monitor, and you can simultaneously see the RGB and the CMYK color channels. And if you're familiar with other software programs, you may say, hey, I really like the lab color channel, and I'm going to tell you that we are working on that, and that is coming very soon. So keep your updates turned on. So I can see all of these color channels down here. Now, what I can do is that with any color channel that I wanted, I can click on the right button or right click on any of these, and I can either add this as a new layer in my current image, or I can save that individual channel as a whole new layer to my current film strip. So I'm going to take the green color channel here, which is my middle color channel, and I'm going to click add that as a new layer in my current image. And what you're going to see is now this is my green layer. I can change the opacity of it. I can toggle back and forth between what I can see in the background and the original print. I could also make it visible or invisible. And if I decide that didn't really do what I wanted, but let me look at the original image, I could even click on pan, and I can drag this layer off to the side and compare what does my green channel look like compared to my original. Once you slide them off, it's a little hard to get them back if you try to eyeball it. So we click position to base, and I'll snap it right back to where it was to begin with. And I just really didn't like it. I wasn't very happy with that green layer. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. I can do that same thing with any of these CMYK channels. And also if I wanted to, let's say we wanted to see what's in the black channel. So this is the bottom one. And I'm going to save that to the film strip. And let's see what's down here in our film strip. I'm going to refresh my film strip, and we'll see that black channel pull in. It's right here. And I can load that into the window, and let's see what that looks like. That's not going to cut it either. Okay, so what do we do with a print like this. For me, this is one of those prints that we stare at and think, I really should be able to do something more with this image than I can. And the processes that it takes to work with an image like this are extremely complicated, almost convoluted in some instances, but possible, very possible. And so what we did is we programmed in easy buttons. Let me show you where these are. So if we go image processing, and I covered this just a little bit ago, we have these easy buttons. Initially, we wanted to program these buttons to say an anhydrous print. And then if you process something with an anhydrous, you would have all these options available for you for some of the more complicated processes, but great processes for digitally processing a latent print processed with an anhydrous. And we do one for amido black and rhodamin 6G and basic yellow 40 and oil red O. And we would go and we'd hit all of these main processes. But what we found out, and it just makes sense, is that people photograph their prints different ways and people's eyes see different things. So some people may almost always photograph basic yellow through a yellow filter over the camera lens, and that makes sense. But occasionally I've had cases where I got better results and better contrast with the background if I photographed a basic yellow 40 print with an orange filter over the lens. And you get different results if you photograph rhodamin 6G with a 532 nanometer laser than you do if you photograph it with an ALS. You just get different results depending on what your light sources are. And short of us putting together a big package that contains specific filters and specific cameras where you have to buy all of our equipment just for these digital processes to work, we needed another way to address this. And so we made this at a version that I can understand and that I can work with, and that is, what color are your ridges? So looking back at my computer screen, if you have purple ridges, that's going to be anhydrous, maybe LCV. Then here's some options for you. Normal is going to be a normal looking print. Background is going to be if you have some background interference. Background 2 is going to be another type of background interference. I'll tell you that specifically dealing with purple ridges, background 1 is going to do fairly well with the black text if you have black text in the background. Background 2 is going to work really well if you have blue handwriting or anything like that that's in the way. And then also, what do you do if you just have a really faint anhydrous print? Maybe it doesn't have any background interference, and so we've got an easy button for you for that. Right now for white ridges, we've just got invert colors. I'm going to tell you that as we advance into lab color, we're going to be expanding these options here. Under orange ridges, the same thing. We've got a normal, a background 2, and faint prints. Under yellow ridges, normal, background 2, faint print, blue ridges. And then we also just have an auto enhance where we've already set kind of a standard, I shouldn't even say standard, a typical contrast brightness and other options. And you can just hit execute and see if that auto button will work for you. But these are one-click options. So let's go back over here. You scroll through these by clicking on these arrows right here, and we will be expanding these into more colors. So, you know, orange ridges would be maybe a rhodamin 6G with an ALS, or yellow ridges might be indane dione with a 532 nanometer laser. I'm struggling with that word. Blue ridges may be amido black, Kumasi blue, Sudan black, something like that. So just look at the color of your ridges, and this will help you out with that. So we hope you love the software. We hope you found that really quick and really easy. We do in our own work. Give us a call, 1-866-832-6772, or you can reach us on our website at www.ronsmithandassociates.com. Take care, have a great day, and God bless.